I normally say at the top of each program, I am super excited to have an amazing featured guest with us on today that I would like to present to you. Our guest today is Vanessa Hanna-Verrett. She is an author of an amazing book that we'll get into entitled Pursuing Hope, the story of Justin Emmanuel Hanna. And today we're talking about sound practices to develop serenity and offer support. I am super excited that Vanessa is an author, speaker, podcaster, blogger, wife, and mom who loves God, enjoys golf, and has an insatiable appetite for watermelon. I can certainly relate to that. So after the intro, welcome to the Blueprint audience is Miss Vanessa Hanna-Verrett. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
I am excited. It is my pleasure having you. And I want to jump right in. We've got some great questions to ask you, and I want to be able to get it all in our time together. So please introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Vanessa Hanna-Verrett. I am a Southern girl, born in the Carolinas, educated in the Carolinas. I am a grief coach, and I'm a new author of Pursuing Hope, the story of Justin Emmanuel Hanna.
That is incredible. And a grief coach. Wow. Hopefully we'll get a chance to touch on that because I would definitely like to see, and we'll learn more how you got into that field. Why did you write the book? Why did you write Pursuing Hope?
Well, I feel like it was marching orders. You know, I felt inspired from God to do this. And there were several reasons for it. One, I want people to be able to normalize that grief process. As you go through, you feel all manner of emotions. And I wanted to be able to normalize some of that for people because I didn't have that when my son passed away. So that's one reason. The other reason is I just want people to know that it's possible to go through this process of loss and come out on the other side with your sanity and your relationship with God intact. And I especially wanted to reach out through this book to parents who have lost children. Of course, being with my own personal situation, I do have a passion for that.
And that's why I so appreciate you coming on the program and sharing your story and being transparent. So as you mentioned, this book was written in honor of your son, Justin Emmanuel Hanna.
Yes.
Tell us about him.
Justin, I want you to know that he gave great hugs. I mean, he would give me the best bear hugs ever. And I think if I just shared with you a couple of stories, then that would give everyone an idea of who Justin was. There was one week that he was at home for spring break. And we did a lot of things. And one of the things that we did was to go shopping. And he wanted to buy a pair of Toms. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Tom's shoes, but they're known for stylish comfort.
Yes.
And and another reason that he loved Tom's is because every person who buys a pair of shoes is responsible, because the company, I say responsible, but every person who buys a pair of shoes, one pair is given to a needy child. So everyone that participates in buying is also participating in providing a pair of shoes for a needy child. He loved the fact that that was attached to this particular purchase. And another quick story would be, there was one day when my other son, my oldest son, Donovan, had taken Justin and some of his friends to the store. And at the store, there was a homeless lady. And Justin proceeded to take off his coat and give it to the homeless lady. And his friends were saying, hey, bro, what are you doing? We'll just go inside and buy her a blanket. And, teenagers. But his response was, unless you give something that you really want, you're not really giving.
Wow.
That is who Justin was.
What an amazing heart. And for
Yeah.
a teenager to have such compassion.
Yes. I really appreciated that in him.
So it said, I'm a mom of two. It said that when a parent loses a child, they are mourning the life and the potential that that life held. Is
Yes.
there a particular time of the year that hits you emotionally and causes you to pause in remembrance of your son?
Well, I think about him every day, every
Yeah.
single day. But and there are several times of the years that I that are special when I pause to think about him. But one of the times that I pause and can even laugh is during Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving is a time when he was home. He was home on school on break, and the last Thanksgiving we spent together, I decided I was going to do something I had never, ever, never done before. And that was to bake my very first turkey. Now, I'm vegetarian. I'm now vegan, actually. At the time, Justin was eating both.
Oh.
He would eat the vegan recipes, and he would also eat foods like chicken and turkey, meats like that. And so I decided I was going to bake him a turkey. Why? I don't know, but I was just influenced to do that. And that was truly an experience. It actually turned out well. As I pulled the turkey out, and then I was carved it up and had served it, I was just waiting to see what kind of response, because I couldn't taste it myself because
Right.
I'm vegan. So it was truly an experiment that actually worked out well. So I can't help but think about that every Thanksgiving.
Absolutely, because you had no way of knowing, did I do a good job or not? So,
Exactly. He was either going to be pleasantly surprised or really sad. It all worked out.
perfect. And then also the plus was he ate the vegetarian dish as well, so he wasn't going to go hungry.
Exactly.
Oh,
that
my
definitely makes me laugh, creates some hormones, some endorphins for me.
Yes. And I imagine it's comforting as well to think about that and laugh.
It is. It really is.
And talking about comforting yourself, how in the world, what is the secret, please, for those that are watching that may be in your position or may know of someone in your position? What is the secret to sustaining faith when I imagine everything looked hopeless at this point?
That is very true. That is very true. It was a really dark period, and it did look hopeless. And and sometimes pain can influence people to feel like God is not with them, that
Absolutely.
God is not there. And so it's important for each of us to remember, even God's presence is not based on how we're feeling at that
Mm,
moment.
yeah.
Is we just have to know what we know. So it's just like if I were outside and the sun was brightly shining, and then I walk into the house and I walk down into the basement where there are no windows and I can't see the sun, that doesn't mean the sun is not still shining. We just have to know what we know as Christians, that God is there, right there in the midst of everything with us. So the secret is one of the secrets, I would say, is that number one, knowing what you know, that God is there even
Yeah.
when we can't feel him.
Yes.
Continuing to feed on God's word. Continuing to surround yourself with people who are positive. And no matter how you feel, continue communicating with God. Continue talking to him about the good, the bad, the ugly, because he already knows. And he tells us, come, let us reason together. And
Yeah.
to reason together is to have a conversation. So those are the things that helped me to continue in faith. It was tested. It
Yes.
was definitely tested. But in the end, knowing what you know is what helped me to make it through.
I can imagine. I love the analogy that you shared, that the sun being shining brightly on the outside, but being in a basement with no windows, that doesn't
Yes,
mean that the sun has stopped shining. And
exactly.
to continue to communicate with God, because I don't know, it's been my experience, my personal experience, is that sometimes
Mhm.
when challenges come and disappointment come, we don't talk to God. We think God is the last person
Exactly.
to talk to because we're angry with God.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
so it's important. Thank you for sharing those secrets to continue to communicate and pour out our heart to God, because God is still
yes,
there.
yes,
Oh, I
yes.
love it. I love it. On page 53 in your book, you share, it took some time for me to come to a point of self reasoning. The more
Mhm.
time passed and I could not speak with Justin, see him, get one of those great hugs that you talked about
Yes,
him
yes,
getting,
yes.
the more it hurt. And it seemed like nothing could fill that emptiness. You say, as I look back, I really don't know where hurt ended and anger began. Let's
Mm.
talk about that emotion of anger, and what did it look like when you lost your son? Because I'm confident anger came.
Oh, definitely. Now, and it didn't come immediately, but
Mm,
it did come. And I was so angry. I was hurt and I was angry. It was painful. It was emotional. I wanted God to have done something for me. I wanted God to have made this okay. You see other people, other children who are
yes,
faced with certain challenges and they survive. They fall from 10-foot
yes.
mountaintops or whatever the case may be. So, but that was kind of some of the thoughts that was going through my mind. It's like, why was a
Yeah.
constant. So anger was bitter. It came with tears, lots of tears. Um, but anger was also an emotion that was misguided.
Wow.
And I didn't, that didn't pop up to the top of my list initially to my thinking process, but I did discover it was misguided. I was angry, but angry with the wrong person. God is not the enemy. Satan
Wow.
is the enemy and the one who brings pain and suffering and death and turmoil. He's the driving force, not God. God is a restorer. And that wasn't the realization in the beginning of all this, but praise God, he allowed me to go through and then come to this point of reasoning. And
Wow.
that's definitely a part of what I'm not the only one that's ever
Yeah.
felt that way. And that's definitely a part of what I want to share with whoever will listen, share
Yeah.
with the world. God is not the enemy. So it's important to know who the enemy is.
Now, if you don't mind sharing with us how in understanding, please, viewers and listeners, understanding when I ask this question that it's different for everyone. And I realize that and I accept that. But for you, Vanessa, how long was that process that you had to get through the anger and realizing that God was not the enemy? How long did that take for you?
Well, it seemed like it was a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in actuality, though, as I think back, like my son passed away in March. If I had to put a timeline on it, um, there were probably several weeks in there. It didn't last an extremely long time. I find that it's been my experience that if you're a believer before the accident, even though you may go through some challenges, some
Yes.
dark valleys, um, but you circle back around by God's grace. You circle back around as you allow the Holy Spirit to lead, guide, and direct. And God
Yeah.
allows that. His shoulders are big enough to
Yeah.
handle it. He allowed it for me. He allowed it for Job. I mean, he allowed it for Mary when she said, Jesus, where were you? I mean, she
Oh,
wasn't
yes.
happy at what had happened. Her brother had died. Jesus, if you had been here sooner, this would not have happened. He did it for Ruth. I mean, he allowed Ruth to go through her disappointment and change. Call me Mara, she says, bitter.
Yes. Bitter. Yes.
So, I can't thank him enough. I can't thank him enough for his patience, for his love, for his care. And that is a big part of my message is God is not the enemy.
Mm.
God is like Emmanuel. Justin's middle name is Emmanuel, God with us. God
Yeah.
is right there in the midst with us.
Oh my gosh. My heart is warmed and encouraged by you sharing your story and again just being so transparent about your grief process, but also about your faith process and how
Yeah.
that has been key. So when there's someone like me who's on the outside looking in, what are the 5 stages of grief that I should be looking for in order to help support someone that may have an experience in experiencing grief like you have
Hmm.
experienced?
Well, that's a great question. And there are 5 stages. And one thing I would want people to know that these stages are not linear. It's a cycle. It's a cycle, and it doesn't really happen in any particular order. And those are anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and hopefully acceptance comes as well. Now, for me, denial, I mean, it was so unexpected. It was so unexpected when I got the call that there'd been an an accident, that, he'd been swimming and that he was in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. It never entered my thoughts that he would never come out of the hospital, that this would be it. And so when the word came that he had passed away, I mean, I was in shock. It's like my heart and my mind were at civil war.
Yeah.
My heart was refusing to accept what my brain was trying to process. And I was like, no, I remember screaming, no, no, I didn't want to hear it. That can't be true. Denial was the first onset. Denial was the first of these stages that I experienced. Bargaining came with asking the questions of why. If I could have just gotten there, because at the time I got the message that he had passed away, I had been busily preparing, throwing clothes into a suitcase, about to leave, to head to
Yes.
where he was, and the word came. So the bargaining process included why questions. If I had only gotten there, maybe I could have, spoken with, all of
Yeah.
these things as painful tears continued to flow. So denial, bargaining, then there was the anger combined with the pain, depression. I had never been so depressed in all of my life. And at first I didn't even recognize it. I just had this heavy feeling of a weight. I felt weighed down. I mean, it was like it took all I could do to be able to put one foot in front of the other. And then the funny thing is, I remembered a commercial that I saw years ago about this woman who was bent over, and it was about some kind of a drug that was supposed to be good for depression. And then I was like, oh my goodness, I'm depressed. This is
Wow.
depression. I am that woman. So that was depression. And then finally, acceptance, of course, was the very last stage.
Wow. And how did you get there? I just can't imagine, losing your son unexpectedly. How did you get to acceptance? How did you move forward? And because in chapter 12 you talk about that, titled "How to Move Forward When Your Feet Are Stuck in Cement," getting to that acceptance. How does one move past the paralyzing pain of losing a loved one, and in particular a teenage child, and he was in college, he was on the right path, doing the right things.
Yes, yes. Well, it was extremely difficult. How to move forward when feet are in cement and stuck there seemingly. And actually, that was initially the title that I gave to a seminar that I presented at a church software conference in Nashville, Tennessee, and then later decided to add it into my book.
So you get from software to part of your grieving process. Talk about God using everything and anything, right? To
God,
meet us where we are.
yes, but God, because
Yes.
and I feel like He worked this out, because even though talking about it was painful, and
Mhm.
and initially when God inspired me to talk about it, He said, share your story. And I withdrew. I was like, I don't want to do that. I
Wow.
mean, that's going to be painful over and over again. I said, I remember saying, that's so morbid. I don't want to do that.
Wow.
but yet there was healing. There was healing for me throughout that process as well. And when you say talk about God, look at God, that was the first time that type of presentation had been done at any of those particular church software conferences. And I was working for that company at the time, and I went to the person who was in charge, and just on inspiration,
Wow.
and presented my idea, and they were like, you know, we often look for things that are different, you know, kind of out
Yeah.
of the box. So yeah, let's try that. And so I was able to share. I was able to share that story. It's my mission, and God opens the doors. And I've told him that if you open the doors, I'll walk through. And I
Yeah.
was able to do that the first time it's ever been done at that company.
Wow.
To God be the glory.
Incredible, incredible. I could talk to you forever, but I want to make sure that I get into your being a grief counselor. What are your thoughts on grief counseling, journaling, or therapy as a means to help move through grief? Because everybody talks about having faith in God, which is great.
Right, right.
I'm ordained minister and all that, but also we can get help. There's nothing wrong with getting help. So share with us about your thoughts on grief counseling and getting therapy.
Well, I'll tell you this. I fractured my hip,
Mhm.
and I went to the doctor, to a medical doctor, to help manage my pain
Yeah.
and help me go through a healing process. When I lost my child,
Yes.
my heart was shattered, not just broken, but shattered. So I went to a counselor to help me manage my pain and get through that process. So I am totally on board with Christian grief counseling or Christian counseling.
Yeah.
You know, it could be grief of the loss of a loved one, or it could be grieving something else, the loss of a job, or whatever the situation might be. And as far as journaling, I love to journal, and I like pretty books. So
Oh,
I'll
that's
find something
beautiful.
that's pretty, and I like bold colors sometimes too. So I'll get the big ones because I'm a big writer. You know, I write fat. So they taught me how to do that in second grade, and I've been doing
That's
that ever
right.
since. So, and so I am pro journaling. For me, it just helps to constructively get those emotions out and onto paper. And there's just something about pen and paper for me
Yes.
versus using an app. I have apps where I can jot down blessings and things like that. But for me, there's nothing like actually that writing. So it just I find it very stress reducing and relieving. So I encourage people to journal. You know, you can write down things you might not even want to share with another person in the world,
Yes.
you know, just you and God.
Yes. Yes.
And there's something about that that's freeing. And
Hmm.
my husband and I are we host grief support meetings.
Hmm.
And that's one thing that we encourage people to do, write it out. So I
Wow.
am pro journaling.
So
Also,
yes, yes.
self-care,
Hmm.
self-care. When my late husband passed away, I mean, it was 6 weeks of intense suffering for him. And of course, he was suffering, which meant I was suffering. You know, talking to the doctors, I was, you know, trying to relate information to family and friends. I was thoroughly mentally, physically, emotionally drained. And after the services and after a while, I decided that I was going to go to a place called Wildwood Lifestyle Center, and it's located in Wildwood, Georgia. You're like, okay,
Wow.
what's that Wildwood Lifestyle Center? What's going on with that? Well, it was so healing and so pampering. It's a Christian organization.
Mhm.
They have medical doctors there, and they have different therapies that they recommend for you. And when I say therapy, I mean massages, water therapy. And the morning begins with this beautiful, soft instrumental music, Christian music that's piped throughout the building. And then you have the opportunity to join a group in a room for prayer. Before you get any type of service, the doctors kneel and pray. They kneel
Wow.
and pray with you and for you. If they recommend a back massage or whatever kind of massage, whirlpool bath, whatever they recommend, the person who is officiating that particular service
Mhm.
kneels and prays with you
Wow.
before even starting. Everything is just put before God before it even touches you. The meals are prepared for you. There are vegetarian slash vegan meals. Um, you get fresh squeezed a green drink like about 30 minutes before your meal every day. It's
Wow.
out in the country. You're walking, going for walks in nature. Oh
Mm.
my goodness. That was so good. I mean, there's no TV, there's no television. So
Wow.
you're unplugged. You're
Mhm.
unplugged from everything, and then everything that they do soothes your mind and your
Yes.
soul. I
Oh,
mean, it was
so you're taking care of physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. It was a wonderful experience.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I wrote that down. Now, is that open to anyone, or is it only open specifically for those that are dealing with grief, or is it open just in general?
It's open just in general. It's open
Wow.
to anyone. That's just something that I decided, I was inspired to do
Absolutely.
because I needed it all.
Absolutely.
I needed it
Oh,
all.
so now with grief counseling, I put up your IG page and your Facebook, and how to look for you on Facebook. So is that
Yeah.
how individuals reach out to you for grief counseling services that you and your husband provide, or what is the best way?
That is how they would reach
Okay.
us. We have a YouTube channel, Verrett Ministry. We receive messages there on
Okay.
YouTube as well. So those would be the best means of connecting with us. We have
Okay.
a website too, verrettministry.com.
Okay.
And
Let me
while
get
you're adjusting that, I just want
uh-huh.
um, to interject that is grief coaching as
Grief
opposed to
coaching.
counseling. Yeah,
True.
grief
Thank you
coaching.
for clarifying.
Yes, we recommend people to counselors if
Yes.
it looks like it's more intense than what just coaching can assist.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I stress
Yeah.
coaches are not counselors. We are not therapists. That is not our function or our role. That can get over into pastoral care, and then whether or not you need a clinician and you have
Yeah.
connections to those individuals as well.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
please visit VerettMinistry.com, correct? On website,
Correct.
or IG, Instagram, or on Facebook. Thank you so much. I could talk to you more and more, and especially given the pandemic, there
Yeah.
are a number of people who are experiencing loss. who are experiencing
Yes.
grief. And
Yes.
please take advantage of reaching out to Vanessa and VerrettMinistry.com, or going on to IG if that's your thing. You default to Instagram or Facebook, and reach out and get the assistance that you need. And I'm personally going to check out Wildwood because that sounds like the kind of place I'd want to be once this
Wonderful.
COVID passes.
Look, I didn't want to go back home. I didn't want to leave.
Yes, I am a fan, a proponent of self-care. I think it's critical. Thank you so much. And please, as I mentioned, oh, look, I want to be certain that I mentioned the book Pursuing Hope.
Yeah.
Again, visit VerrettMinistry.com, Pursuing Hope. And her story that she shares will help you. Pursuing Hope, the Justin Emmanuel Hanna story. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure to be here with you.
Oh my gosh, I told you it was going to be an amazing show. Thank you. Get in touch with Vanessa, VerrettMinistry.com, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Blueprint.